Welcome to Smart Route, the podcast by CallTrackingMetrics, where you'll hear stories from businesses at the intersection of marketing, customer experience, and sales. We're sitting down with business leaders and industry experts to dive deep into the path they took to find success. Here's your host, Courtney Tyson.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Smart Route. I'm your host and strategic partnership manager at CallTrackingMetrics, Courtney Tyson. Working in partnerships for a SaaS company has been really enlightening. I've learned a lot about the value of partnerships and how partnering with other companies can help to drive growth for ours. One of the most popular partnership concepts at the moment is the idea of a company having what we call a marketplace. It's a place where a company can showcase the different partnerships, integrations, products and services, etc., that it offers. We're going to dive into this concept today deeper with Nick Sanghvi, VP of Alliances and Business Development at Caspio. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Nick.
Yeah, great to be here, Courtney. Thanks for having me.
Excited to chat with you. And before we get started, I'm just going to share a little bit more about you with our audience. So we invited Nick today because he's really an expert on marketplaces, having built one from the bottom up. Nick leads Caspio's partner program. Caspio is the no-code platform for business applications. Nick's career has been spanning over 20 years in technology, and he's worked with some of the largest global technology companies, as well as digital transformation and intelligent automation startups in Silicon Valley. He delivers easy to use and powerful technology solutions. And that's a passion for Nick. So thanks again, Nick, for being here. And let's get started.
Absolutely.
Let's dive right in. Let's talk about the basics, Nick. So tell us a little bit more about the concept of a SaaS marketplace and why companies are
absolutely.
diving into
So, Courtney, this the whole concept started with more and more SaaS applications not wanting to stop at just being software, but rather wanting to be a platform. And so this whole idea of two-sided platforms where you enable creators or your partners or developers on the one hand to create applications, but it could be many other things, right? Like, for example, there can be marketplaces for artists to showcase their wares, etc. as well. So this whole two-sided marketplace approach started really taking off once people started seeing successful companies like Uber, Airbnb, etc. bringing this whole concept to life on the B2C side. And then B2B players like Salesforce and others also realized that we don't necessarily have all the answers ourselves. There are, our passionate fans in the form of customers or partners or developers who may be already building out stuff, for their own use, but which can also help many others. And so that's how this whole idea of marketplaces started, and it's a booming economy today.
Yeah, I whenever I think of the concept of marketplaces, what I think back to is Etsy, when Etsy launched, right? And how great that was for creators to be able to share what they make with others, right? And so, Nick, what you've just said today is, the SaaS marketplace is essentially the same thing. It's a tool that's helping companies to enable their partners, or other companies might want to work with them, to build with them and work with them in a different way than they normally have. So you've done this in your current role. You've built a marketplace from the ground up. And I'd like to hear more about, your role as VP of Alliances and Business Development, and really what your journey was like to build the Caspio
absolutely.
marketplace.
So again, just to clarify for the benefit of listeners, it's a big team effort, right? So any of these efforts, like especially starting a marketplace for your SaaS application or your platform as a service, it is a huge team effort. There's several people working on it, and so, for example, just from our perspective here at Caspio, there's marketing that is involved in coming up with the product marketing, as well as just the overall the website marketing team in coming up with the whole concept, the idea, discussing commercialization, etc. There is the product team gets involved in making sure that the marketplace integrates very nicely with the product. And then there is the development team that actually builds out the whole thing. Then there's alliances or partnerships team, which reach out to partners, get the word out saying that, hey, our marketplace is live now. Come and list your applications. There could also be just those internal, either professional services or other development teams that will have to initially seed the marketplace with some applications, because nobody wants to look at an empty storefront. And if you have an empty storefront, no partner will want to list their apps either. So there's a lot of a huge team effort, and what we felt is there's definite huge value here in a number of different areas. One is getting your own customer, first of all, providing value to your customers by giving them a variety of these apps. Some of them are even completely free. Some might be paid for, but typically it would be a fraction of the cost that it would take them to build it themselves. So you're giving value to your customers, thus increasing their retention and stickiness with the platform. You are also, this is a lead gen mechanism as well. So, if someone were to search for a low code, no code CRM template, Caspio's CRM template on our marketplace might show up. And then that becomes a direct use case. And then they'll be like, oh, wow, so I get this template and, and I can build it in my own way on my low code, no code, using a low code platform instead of using Salesforce or HubSpot, etc. So there's a lot of value. Partners can make additional revenue out of, instead of just delivering solutions on a case-to-case basis. Once they've developed one solution, they can actually keep on monetizing it for hundreds of other customers. So there's definite tremendous value here. And sometimes there's just, there's these passionate fans in terms of developers, etc., on the ecosystem who just want to contribute back to the community, right? I mean, there's so many of them. They just want to see that, hey, I've spent so much effort in building this out. I want to give it back to the community. So all of those.
That's wonderful. So just to kind of recap, you kind of went through a few different, value adds to the marketplace, or why it's valuable, right? So number one, marketplaces are providing value to customers. It's making customers stickier, right? It's retaining them more, likely because what a marketplace can do is help them to connect their tech stack. So if you're allowing someone to help connect two pieces of software, it helps them to be stickier with both of those pieces, right? You talked about the marketplace being a lead gen mechanism, which is huge, right? I think we're going to talk a little bit about how companies kind of buy from marketplaces and how marketplaces have kind of shifted buying behavior a little bit. And then two, marketplaces can be a huge marketing tool for partners and the company who hosts them. So for partners, it's allowing them to get in front of your audience. For those hosting them, I mean, it's showing all of the different tools that you have under your belt or integrations, right? Which if someone coming to your site shopping, they want to see those things to see if your tool is going to be great for them. You talked too about just enabling devs, making sure that they kind of have an environment where they can build and then share, which I think is cool. And I know that some marketplaces even monetize those things. So with that said, there are lots of different types of marketplaces out there. Some that maybe just kind of host maybe what we call cards, right? Like, hey, these are our partners. This is our partner marketplace. But there's also the deeper marketplaces, such as what Caspio built, which is a true build environment where partners can go and build with Caspio, which is very cool. And that's really where the retention and the stickiness is coming from, in my opinion, right? So many companies have built, or they're in the process of building marketplaces just like you have, because obviously they see the value, right? You talked about the benefits of a marketplace, from a company hosting one and their partners and their customers. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of throw in there as maybe like a benefit or a value add for either, the company, partners, or customers?
I think one of the other things that does come to mind is that nowadays, SaaS platforms as well as PaaS, which is like platform as a service, similar like Caspio, many of us have a component of usage-based pricing, right? So, like at Caspio, for example, if you use a certain number of what we call data pages, which is basically different screens in your application, then you have to go to the next higher level. Similarly, in HubSpot or Salesforce, if you use certain amounts of functionality, you have to bump up to the next level. So the marketplaces also help you in your expansion with your current customers as well. So that expansion revenue also does get served by marketplaces, because one customer might have, for example, come in to use Caspio for, say, their CRM to begin with. But then they come across this whole, hey, I have this, these people also have this marketing library and, project management system, as well as IT ticketing system. All of these are templates. Let me just download them, check them out, and see if they work for me or not. And lo and behold, you have suddenly, customers are using Caspio a lot more. They're bumping up to the next plan. So there's expansion revenue component as well in there. And then there is, of course, I think you also kind of made a reference to that, is that to make the whole marketplace transactions very smooth and seamless, you would ideally want to act as the kind of intermediary in those transactions. You're not necessarily wanting customers to, fish out their credit cards and pay those each and every vendor on the marketplace. Although you could do that, but the ideal smooth, frictionless experience would be kind of like an Apple App Store or something. You go into an app, the App Store, you buy it. Actually, you're paying Apple. Apple's taking a cut on that and then passing it over to the partner. Apple, in the meantime, also performs a lot of, they're performing quality checks, security check, etc. There are also some, if you say, hey, oh no, I want my money back or something like that, you just reach out to Apple, they would refund it to you. So it does make the operation a little smoother for the partner as well, because all they need to, they don't need to bother with hundreds of different customers calling in, requesting this, that, refunds, whatever, right? They're just getting a check at the end of the month, and the experience for customers also much more improved. While acting as an intermediary and providing this value add, your platform can obviously extract a certain fee out of it as well in the process.
Yeah, so I think that's a huge factor to consider, right? When companies are planning to build a marketplace, the whole kind of monetization, right? And what you're saying is that it's kind of best to kind of act as the intermediary in a way, to help with those transactions. And it's a way to help your partners monetize what they're building with you, giving them the opportunity to make money for themselves,
yes,
not only for Caspio, right? I think that's a great point. So outside of monetization, Nick, what other factors does a company need to consider when thinking about building a marketplace?
So, I mean, the first thing would be, first of all, not every product is going to be suited for a marketplace. You need to, from a marketplace perspective, like you said, at the very basic, there's just like a partner directory of sorts, and maybe you're helping in making the connections. Like, for example, Wix has a partner marketplace where partners list their, and Wix is a website building tool for those who are not familiar, but they list partners with their catalogs and all of that, and customers can reach out saying that, hey, I have a project. Wix does some intelligent routing of those projects to different partners, etc. So that's kind of the first step in building it on, and that's actually how we also got started at Caspio. So, right? Then you need to have something that allows for that extensibility, right? So we at Caspio, obviously being a no-code, low-code platform, that was a given from day one, is you can build applications, etc. So there needs to be some level of extensibility that you can build on top of, and you need to provide those developer kits or whatever, so that and the documentation, etc. Right? So and again, you could like many applications, like Zoom initially started off as just as a meeting app, but as they kind of grew, now Zoom has a marketplace where you can go in and there's various apps that interoperate with Zoom and all of that. So it can be kind of a gradual step in your journey, but your application does need to be extensible via APIs, etc., to build on top of. there are also other, we generally think of apps and such, but there is also data marketplaces are also a big thing. So Snowflake has a data marketplace. There's nothing app related in there at all, but you have hundreds of data vendors out there. You can, get any sort of like weather related data, financial information, currency exchange rates, stock market information, etc. There's hundreds of these vendors providing these data sets, some of them running into terabytes and terabytes of information. You can buy them, it gets automatically integrated or uploaded into your Snowflake database, and then you can start using the data like that. So that's data sets, which is in fact at Caspio as well. That's the next category that we are adding and kind of actively reaching out to partners to get that added as well. So there's a bunch of different categories that you can think of and see what would help your customers. Basically, if we always keep that perspective or point of view from a customer's point of view, I think we can definitely start building and adding value. And kind of to your earlier point around, the being an intermediary and providing that value, and thus being able to also extract that commission or whatever out of it. I would just compare Craigslist and Airbnb, right? Which one would you prefer? Craigslist is not going to charge you anything, but you don't know how valid that listing is. You don't know. You don't have that trust factor. You don't have anything. Whereas Airbnb, in fact, they even, I think, list that, hey, this is the Airbnb fee, right? And you're like, but that's okay because they're providing such a much better experience, right? So that's where you have to decide where do you want to be on that spectrum.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things you just said too was you need to evaluate who your customers are and what they're looking for in order to determine what your marketplace is going to look like. I think that was a huge point. There's a lot of different factors to consider when building a marketplace, but considering what your customers will find value in is important. And we talked a lot about
just one more thing since you brought it up, I think I recollected. And by the way, I was going to mention that there is this, towards the end, I was going to mention that there is this fantastic book by Andrew Chen of Andreessen Horowitz. The book is called The Cold Start Problem. And Andrew spent time at Uber and has worked with many other startups, and he'd spent time with Uber during its very early days, right? So he really discusses this problem at length. And for example, in a two-sided marketplace, what do you want first? Do you want the drivers first or the passengers first? And it's kind of a catch-22, right? Like without the drivers, the passengers are not going to be there, and without the passengers, why would anyone want to be a driver? But so a lot of things to think about.
Sure. And I selfishly loved this question too, Nick, being that, you've had so much experience building marketplaces, and here at CTM, we're in the process of building ours too. And, we're just kind of on the forefront of kind of scoping that out. So, speaking to you with that experience certainly helps. We talked a lot about marketplaces really kind of being this indirect selling tool. And so I wonder if you could talk, Nick, a little bit more about how marketplaces have changed how professionals purchase software, but also, how businesses sell their software too. Like from those different perspectives, how are marketplaces changing, the way it's purchased and the way it's sold when we're talking about software?
No, absolutely. So marketplaces, they're just marching and becoming a much bigger share of how software is sold and purchased. Started off more as like, hey, okay, this would be a nice add-on, like Salesforce, etc., opening up like an app marketplace of sorts, but then soon enough, there were entire companies that were built on just offering solutions on the Salesforce marketplace, right? Just like there are, of course, companies built out of the App Store, right? So on the B2C side, similarly, there have been so many companies that are just, all that they do is cater to the marketplaces. like AWS Marketplace is another thing that comes to mind. There are companies that are tightly integrated, they're hosted on AWS, and they just want to make the experience frictionless for buyers to buy. So if you're already an AWS customer and something is listed on the AWS Marketplace where you can buy it and provision it directly on the same bill as your AWS bill, it just makes it a whole lot easier. You don't have to go through as many hoops in terms of your procurement and your finance teams. And especially the bigger the organization, the more these things slow down your deals in closing. And so, this is going to take over more and more of the buying and selling processes as we go forward. There's also, from a buyer's perspective, again, just like that whole Airbnb experience, the other value of Airbnb, you can see those ratings and reviews, and you know that these are actual people like you who've lived, who've stayed in those properties, etc. So that's the same value that you get out of a marketplace. Is you get those, as they call it, the UGC, or the user generated content, which is very valuable nowadays. Is there's reviews and ratings, when you see people like yourselves and you read their reviews, love the CRM template, wish it had these so and so things, right? Then you'll be like, oh yeah. And then if you see a lot of, like, if you're a small business and you see a lot of small business customers saying, hey, run a 50-member business and this employee management system worked perfectly for us, then you're like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense for me, right? Whereas if you're a large company, then you're like, oh no, this is not going to maybe cut it out for me, etc. So there's all of that value as well that comes through.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's interesting. You spoke a lot about the user-generated content, and I guess I didn't think about it from that perspective, right? I'm thinking very much about the company building in the marketplace and them using it as a marketing tool and selling tool, but also the company hosting the marketplace using it as a selling tool, marketing tool. But to think about how someone who builds on a marketplace can then have that user content generated. I mean, those are reviews, and we know the value of reviews and how much weight we as consumers hold to them. So that's really very interesting to think about. I think in general, right, marketplaces just have a variety of different benefits, and the fact that they're this indirect selling tool, it's going to drive value and money, really, right, to both parties and all parties involved is really what's the main benefit here, right? So this has been extremely insightful and helpful to kind of better understand the concept of marketplaces, how to get started, the different types and such. You had plugged a book earlier, the Cold Start Problem, Nick, but I wanted to ask if there was anything else that you'd like to plug before we conclude today.
Absolutely. Since we did speak a lot about Caspio, I welcome viewers and listeners to check us out at www.caspio.com, and that's spelled CASPIO.com. And while there, check out our marketplace, check out our partner program, and see, and of course, check out our platform as well. We think it's the leading low-code, no-code platform, and so do a lot of analysts and users on various ratings platforms like G2 and Capterra. So would love to hear back from your audience on what they think.
That's wonderful. Yeah, definitely go check out the marketplace that Nick and his team built from the ground up. It's really nice to look at. I'll put it that way, right? You guys did a great job. And I wish you all the luck with it. I know you'll do great. Definitely, if you have any interest in learning more about building marketplaces, connect with Nick on LinkedIn too. So when we share the episode, we'll be sure to include your social handles as well. So yeah, I mean, in general, again, marketplaces have a variety of benefits. They allow a company to showcase its partnerships and feature capabilities, which of course means that marketplaces act as a selling and a marketing tool. And for consumers, marketplaces, are giving you an easier way to buy. They're giving you insight into what other users are saying and how they're using tools. So marketplaces are just in general a really great indirect selling tool. There's different types out there. So definitely feel your customers out and feel your company out before you do decide to move forward and, look at the concept of what you're building. So again, Nick, this was wonderful. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us.
It was
Thanks
great
again.
for me as well, Courtney. Great chatting with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us as well. Smart Route is going to be taking a summer break after this episode, so you can expect us back in September with brand new content for you. Enjoy summer, everyone, and thank you for your support.